Hello, hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Thanks for joining us for another exciting AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today, we're very excited to welcome back Noah Hamman back in the mix. We're going to spend some time talking about the market, what mattered, get some highlights, and of course, answer some questions. So as a good reminder, if you're out there and joining us, one, as always, we really appreciate it. It's great that you can spend your Friday with us. Hopefully you find this interesting. Little echo. Good reminder,
One,
if you
really?
have, what'd you say?
You have an echo in your ear? I don't hear it.
Oh, no, I was responding to comments before we went live
Oh,
on my phone.
sorry.
And then when we went live, the video recording sound came through. So that's all.
Right.
But that's just an example of being active in the comments, responding to questions, seeing the comments already. But yeah, if you have more as we're going through, always a good reminder. You're welcome to put them in the chat and we'll get to them as we go. I see Stevie in here, which is great, saying
Stevie.
happy National Fun at Work Day. Skip,
That's
great to see
right.
you
The
as well.
last work day of the month, he was pointing out.
Is that work day of the month? Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, that's it.
Last
We
market
already
day of
have
the
a
month.
month down in 2026. It's crazy.
Yeah, the time. Where does it go?
Fast.
Yeah, it does
At
go
my
by fast.
age, half as fast at your age.
Whatever. It still speeds by. Yeah, I can't believe we're in February almost. And yeah, we're starting to really get through some of these earnings, which has been really interesting. I know we haven't, and we'll talk cannabis as we go on later on. I know most
We
of that
will?
hasn't been announced. What?
I said we
That's
will.
the plan. That's the plan. But I know most of those earnings are coming out, I think, mid to late February, it sounds like, for the
It's
ones that
cold.
we've
We can talk about heating if you want. And
we
then
can
later, cooling, and then maybe ventilation.
and heating again, and maybe conditioning the air of some kind. That is true. I
That's
will
right.
say we talked about it yesterday, but a reminder and a teaser that we will have next week, I think, coming out, a really interesting resource for people. A white paper is on its way. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely let you know when that comes out, but should be interesting kind of talking about the intersection of some of the cooling required for AI data centers, all of that as well, which has been very much in focus. And what?
On the Fed announcement, very crypto friendly, right?
Very.
The potential new next Fed chair, I guess it still has to be approved.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, seems crypto friendly. Seems like the market so far, I know it's just got announced, seems to be absorbing it well. Um, I mean, I am curious. I still need to read more about him. Walsh, I think,
Yep, Kevin
kind of
Walsh.
what his sense is. But I will put your a little louder on your mic. I will do that.
Okay, I'll talk louder.
That
I'll
sounds
talk
good.
louder.
Project. No, it's good. No, seems good. Seems like an interesting pick. I feel like it's kind of weird. This year's, or not year's, this most recent Fed meeting seemed pretty tame in general. I feel like, I know expectations were nothing happened. Nothing really happened. I know Powell did make some comments on the Lisa Cook stuff. Didn't make comments on kind of the video and response he had made to kind of the administration putting some pressure on him. But nothing in terms of like major takeaways, I think there. It seems like still getting some expectations for at least a cut in this year. But again, we'll have to wait and see and kind of learn more about this new new nom, to see kind of where things head. But it still seems like, from what we've seen and from what the administration has continued to say, they seem pretty set on keeping things running and running pretty hot, right? I think so.
I think so.
I
I think so. They're
imagine.
trying. I think still the next big shoe to drop will be the Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs. Um, but yeah, I think with the sign of a new Fed chair, I'm expecting lower rates. So that will keep things running hot. But I think things could cool down a little bit if Trump loses his tariff tantrums
That's
ability.
true. That's true.
Because I
Well,
just
I
saw
feel
he
like,
wanted to up it on Canada again over some planes, I think. But
yeah, that's the most recent thing. It's funny. Yeah. I feel like the last time we talked about it and kind of do we see the reversal for tariffs? I think it was the first time that the Supreme Court passed on it. So nothing happened. But now after this, we had all the Greenland stuff and we're going to tariff Europe, but now we have a framework. And then you're right now, the Canada stuff. So I feel like it seems like, I don't know if it's trying to bury any pushback in that by just continually, laying out these tariffs and whatever. But
I mean,
um,
it's a tool that seems to be working, right? So the challenge with that, I think, is, you never know, depending on who's in control of those tools and then how they use those tools matters. But yeah, I think relative to trying to put the US in a much better position, again, as a reminder, what we're almost 40 trillion in debt. So I don't know that tariffs is the right answer to solve that, but I know that we have to quit spending like drunken sailors. And if some of that is in the form of, maybe less money that goes out of the country to other things, maybe that's in the form of, to the extent that you want to sell products. I mean, for people who sell products to other broker dealer platforms, we know that there's a price to be paid. That we get tariffed to get our products available on platforms. I understand that concept really well. So to the extent that we can do that to make our country sort of financially better off and not have such a burdensome debt load. I mean, you always have, I guess, some amount of debt. I'll take it. But I don't know. We'll see how it all
Does
goes.
it does it make it any better if the debt is still looming and still growing, but the value of the dollar has been declining so much that it's technically a little bit less than it would have been? That's been more of a benefit to international names
Yeah,
than
I think
anything
it's a
else.
tool, a short-term tool, right? Because the value of the dollar, certainly like other things, commodities or elsewise, will be cyclical. Um, so I don't, yeah, love it as a long-term tool. It's probably a short-term side impact more than anything else. But getting that debt down and maybe just maybe being a nation of a surplus. I don't know why we can't get there. So I don't know. Fingers crossed. We'll get there.
Yeah, that's true. At least out of the red, I think would be pretty solid. I think we'll have to wait and see.
Huge.
Yeah, I know. That does remind me though, just kind of talking to you're talking commodities. I feel like that's been what's been taking on everything. So much headlines this week in general.
Silver, gold, copper. Yep.
Silver,
Natural
gold, copper.
gas as people are freezing, on the East Coast of the United States.
It's true. But I was looking, I think I know we've seen these like sharp moves up, sharp move down, sharp moves down. I think I was seeing that gold over a year is still up over almost 100% pretty much. And I know we've seen some pullbacks there, but silver, I think up almost a little over 250%. Feels extreme. I feel like I've seen a lot of people talking about it kind of harkening back a little bit to the 70s and in terms of similar trends, inflation, gold running hot again. Do you make anything?
Will you confess that you don't know what it was like in the 70s?
I I feel like I get a little bit of a view. You get music, you get movies, you get a little,
You weren't
whatever.
alive then.
Ah, well, whatever. Well, yeah, that's fair. I can still look back and see I don't know, what it was like. But you weren't investing then, so I feel like it's the same
It's
thing,
true.
right?
I was going to say, was I still in diapers then? I might have been out of diapers, at least in the early 70s, right? Maybe I was
Fair
a
enough.
late bloomer of diapers. I don't know. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, right? Certainly in terms of the environment. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will put it in that camp of history sort of doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So, to find ourselves in historic periods is not a big surprise. But I think the dynamics of what gets us there are very different, right? Tech driven, online driven, now AI driven, and we're probably in the early stages of all of those things that it'll make for an interesting next decade
Yeah, no,
if
that's
I
true.
make it through it.
Speaking of which, have you seen the newest Google AI project that they're working on? The whole where you can take a picture of, a scene, your desk or whatever it is, take a picture of your cat. I think they had a hamster, something like that, and you can effectively animate it within that universe. So you're able to directly, rather than just sort of say, "This is a video of Will Smith eating pasta. Can you make him eat it faster or do something, whatever?" It's more,
Right.
here's my living room. Can you make my cat kind of explore and go around? Really interesting just in terms of, I think, the rate of change. And I'm curious to see kind of what applications come out of that. To me, I think gaming, I know we've talked a lot about sort of like the trends of gaming, definitely more sort of what some people, uh, I want to say do not use as a virtue, but that's a weird way to go around it. But it's the things people use to let off pressure and, have a little fun. And I think that's been one of the areas that has been really successful versus more kind of traditional sides of things like cigarettes, alcohol. We've talked about how those have been kind of weakening trends, I guess, here in the US.
Yeah.
But have you seen any of
Our
those videos? Yeah, I know
vices are
you.
changing.
What did you
I
say?
have not seen that, though. I've definitely seen some crazy AI videos. And it's fun and it's interesting, right? It's going to rapidly evolve. And then I don't know that I have a concern, but it's just like you're going to have a hard time trying to figure out what's real. And I think even as a producer of that content, right? So if you're the person putting your cat and your hamster in your living room, and then you see the video of it, right? Your mind is so powerful that 5 or 10 years from now, you might think, oh yeah, there was that time where my cat and the hamster were running around, and you made that up, but the video plays in your mind almost as if it was real. And so I just think it's going to have such weird implications of one, it's fun and it's interesting. Two, you'll be able to create some really cool, amazing things. But, how do you manage that blending of, not real to what you think or might remember is real?
Well, I think
It's
we're even seeing that, I think, just now in the present. I think there was a story of some woman who I think she was visiting I think her mom, who was struggling with sort of dementia related things, but I think her mom was a big, big fan. I can't remember the name of the artist. It might have been, let's say it was Kiss or something like that. So they're like, love the band. That's great. So I think to make her mom happy, she had, gotten Gene Simmons or something like that and put it in a picture with her and was like, remember the time that you did this? It was so great. So I feel like that is crazy. And we're already seeing that. But I think in terms of, how people are investing and just sort of shaping their reality, aside from the memory part, which is a very personal part and true, but just in terms of like where you're getting information, if you see something come up on your feed and it looks like some, war is starting off in some area, do you react based on that? It's tough.
right. I mean,
Um,
we can bring it back to our investing space. Not to say what you see in the markets isn't real, but just how you react to that, right? You don't have to react to those things, but sometimes it's compulsive, in your nature to say, oh my God, it's all red and I've got to, get out, right? Versus maybe the real reaction being, well, maybe this is the time for me to, do something different. But yeah, you'll just react to the things that you see, real or not.
mhm.
And certainly in the case where it's not real and it spreads quickly, that's the other thing the internet has done, is allow this stuff to, information, this stuff being everything, right? Move so quickly that, yeah, you got to be careful about where you're getting the content from and trusted sources. And it'll be crazy world for my kids.
Yeah, it's true. I do wonder, we've talked a lot about sort of how advisors are kind of getting ready for the next generation and what kind of value add that they can have. I think having a real person that is able to kind of provide some guardrails on that stuff is probably
Right.
important. Because yeah, it feels like it's very easy to get moved around. Also, you could, I think people themselves in on social media can kind of stir up emotions, but also if you have a
Sure.
ton of bots that are echoing stuff, I think it's just can get very difficult in general.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's crazy.
Good question from Skip. You suppose it will create more
Uh,
demand for actual live performances? I feel like
I think so, though. Again, even I don't know how old Skip is, but even back in our day of Milli Vanilli, things that we might have thought were live maybe weren't exactly live. But yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think, when you were talking about AI and stuff like that, we were applying it to investing and what advisors might do in the future. Because then I started thinking, all right, well, the future advisor is going to be an AI agent, right? A bot of some sort. But then I started thinking, well, if all these bots are giving people all the same investment advice, it's almost like indexing, right? At some point, you're getting the same returns everybody else is. And then is there an opportunity to add value outside of it if you can think contrarily, right? And so, well, will there be bots that do that, or will you really need humans to try to navigate some of those things? Um, I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know. I don't know.
but I
It's gonna be
think
crazy.
it's gonna be crazy. I think, I would imagine on the investing side, it probably is supposed to be humans benefited by tools, not fully replaced by the tools, because I don't think it can give you sort of top to bottom everything you need. In terms of
Right.
just like life in general, I imagine, I think there's been a big push towards trying to find connection, trying to find, yeah, community, I guess, ultimately. And you can find that online. I think AI doesn't replace that, but definitely is trying to get into nooks and crannies there in terms of friendships, girlfriends, all these crazy things, trying to replace that. But I don't think that's a true replacement. But it definitely is an increasing trend.
I
So,
mean, listen, at some point they're going to put lifelike skin on these robots,
yeah,
and with the AI modules that, what was the movie? Blade Runner? Have you seen that?
yeah,
That might be old school for you, but
90s, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
People
it's
are
heading that
tuning
way.
into this investing show going, what are those two people on?
We could talk psychedelics. It's not related to that yet.
There
No,
you
that's
go.
true. Yeah, no, it's just, but I think that it does tie into kind of the theme of how people are looking at life, but investing in general is sort of how to prepare, how to navigate what feels like a very kind of quickly shifting world and react to that uncertainty in a way that you're able to navigate through, hopefully come out better on the other side.
Yep.
Yeah. So it feels very of the current moment, even though it feels very not esoteric, but kind of unrelated thing. There you go. Skip's got a Milli Vanilli fan out there, which is great. Quote from
Well, I
um,
saw Steve's comment right
yeah.
there. Yeah, about messing with it. Yeah, it's fun. In fact, I just did that. So I was on a BBC, just a sort of morning market commentary thing, and I'm in a little group chat with my brother and sister, and someone, sent a snapshot of it. And so I just took that and then put it into AI and made it do some really goofy stuff, and then sent it back out to them. So so you're blending sort of the reality of, a sibling sending you a picture with the goofiness of just kind of goofing around with it all, which makes it fun. But yeah, the blending's going to be crazy.
It is true. Also, I saw Stevie's comment
At
on
this point, I don't
pets.
even know if you're real. I mean, you could be a
Honestly, who's to
digital.
say? Yeah, whatever. It could be true though. I feel like that's the world people are heading into, which is crazy. Um, that is a good reminder. My dog is doing great in the snow. Appreciate it, but hope everybody is staying safe and warm. I think in the South, I know we're talking with some of the people at NASDAQ Dorsey Wright who are normally based in kind of the Richmond area to some degree.
Yep.
Hope you're staying safe because I think there's more snow coming towards the south as well. So
Well, and if
um,
you're a race fan, there's supposed to be the Clash this weekend, right? It's sort of the preseason kickoff to the NASCAR season, and already they're making adjustments to it. So yeah, the weather's affecting a lot of stuff, but people and your pets, right, are the things that you really want to be mindful of. I unfortunately saw the news, out of New York, like 10 homeless people, I think, it's froze to death. But yeah, all over places where you might normally be keeping pets outside. Heck, even some of these farms, right? I assume they've got whatever, big barns, things like that they can maybe put some animals into, but they're getting crazy weather that they've not seen in a long, long time.
stay safe out there. It's important. All right, yeah. Hang in there, stay warm.
So is your dog loving the snow, or is it freaked out?
Uh, I think it's the snow here for anyone. I don't know why you'd be super tuned in unless you live in the DC area, but it's more of like they're calling it, I think, snow creep because I think it is
It's
snow topped
ice. Yeah.
by, yeah. I've seen more kind of construction vehicles being used to break through the snow than anything else.
Yes.
They're hauling around pretty large, machines. I don't know what they're called. The
Chunks.
like, yeah,
I saw they're dumping a bunch of it at the old RFK Stadium site.
is that true?
Yeah. I think like they
Oh,
have literally, so instead of snow plows, right, as you would normally see coming through a city to clear the streets, they've got these whatever they are, scooper lifter things that are taking these chunks of ice, right, that was snow, and then driving them over to RFK and then dumping them there. Just because, so, I mean, I guess I don't know why, but especially through
that's
downtown DC, there's not really some place just to kind of pack it on the corner, right? They've got to get those big chunks of ice out of there, and
yeah.
it's challenging.
They're doing it. Fair enough. Okay, I know we're getting off track, but do want to make sure everyone out there is staying warm and it
That's your
is
weather
cold.
update from
That's my weather
AdvisorShares.
update. My update is it's cold, stay warm, unless you're in, I think, California, Florida, any of the other areas that are a lot nicer. I do see WDB, I mess up every time, WEB Dubie's question on cannabis. I do want to get to cannabis in a quick second, but I just really quickly first wanted to just touch on kind of where we are stocks wise and just sort of indexes wise, because I think, let me see where we are
Do a
ending up.
refresh
So
on my quotes.
yeah, exactly. I want to see where we're ending up so
Oh, dang it.
far
I might be talking the
for
market down. I don't know. I can't
the
tell.
indexes. Yep. Okay. We're looking pretty down today. Because when I checked earlier, I think the S&P
Not
was
bad. It's
up.
still up a little bit. Oh, you mean the
Okay.
broader market's down?
The broader market. S&P,
Oh,
I
okay.
think, was up still year to date just under 2%. That might have fallen slightly recently.
Right.
NASDAQ, I think, was up about 1%.
Yeah, things are heading down a little bit today, broader market wise, right?
Yeah.
Except for the
Do
VIX.
you see the VIX?
It's down. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry, it's up. I mean, the broader
okay. I was
market's
gonna say
down. VIX is
volatility's
up
back.
7%.
That makes sense. All right, but then yeah, so it seems like we're still generally positive for the year, but seeing some weakness come back in. I'm sure a lot of that's still the geopolitical kind of tension, what's going on to some degree with the Fed. And I think generally just sort
Government
of the
shutdown.
government shutdown pending as well. There's always something. Yeah, that is
Think it's going to
true.
happen? Where are you placing your Kalshi bet?
I'm going to bet.
This segment
I'm,
is not sponsored by Kalshi, but it should be. So if
it's,
you're watching from Kalshi, give us a shout out. I'm happy to wear the merch for a small
oh, there
fee.
you go. An influencer, you could be there. That's true. I will say it doesn't happen. I think we got one big
Really?
long one
Look at
last
you.
year, so I'm hoping we don't get it. Maybe it's hope more than a bet. What about you? Yes, we get it.
I feel like I've read headlines that would indicate, maybe we're close to a deal between the both sides to get something worked out. I'm betting we're closing. I haven't actually put money on it though.
Okay,
But I'll pull up the odds on Kalshi to see what it says, and I might take a flyer that it pains me to say, and I don't want it to happen, but we might be closing again.
interesting. Okay, it's coming again for sure. All right, we'll see. All right, that's the bet. That's where it's placed. I guess we can talk about impacts on that side of things. I imagine it's the same thing. I mean, regionally in DC, that's probably some impacts in terms of consumer spending and all of that as well. Um,
The crazy thing is,
Cannabis.
I think one of the things that at least some are fighting over is, I think, funding for ICE or DHS, because they're frustrated by them, enforcing the law.
We have different views, I know.
But not to get anybody worked up, but apparently, I think with the last shutdown and whatever they figured out, that entity's funded for the whole year. So to the extent that that's part of the strategy of closing the government, I don't know that that's going to help. But even stuff like the Fed chair, I heard that, or I say I heard, yeah, I heard at least one maybe senator said he won't approve any Fed nomination until they stop whatever's going on with Powell and the disclosures around the building of the Fed building. Um, so I don't know. It just seems like, the sides are at odds over every little thing, and willing to shut government workers out for the sake of standing on whatever they think is important to them.
Mm. Well, I think, okay, so what we saw from the last shutdown in terms of what was able to get done, I mean,
I mean, people
yeah,
were furloughed, right?
yeah,
Or, whatever, weren't getting a paycheck for a while. I think, remember, they were privately funding, I think, military
yeah,
salaries or whatever. Um, I think maybe the backbreaker was getting to the point of the fight over the SNAP benefits or something like
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
Um,
And SNAP, and then I think also just healthcare was also a big thing that I
yeah,
think,
like Medicare, Medicaid payments, I guess, right? So yeah, I think that's the tricky part, which is, to me, the fights are over the smallest of nothing. Their job is to keep this government open, and quite frankly, if they can't keep the government open, I'd love to see some rules that say they don't get to keep their jobs, and we'll just get a whole new crop of people in there. I'd be totally happy with that. Also, term limits, by the way.
yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
so, the fights over these little things aren't going to solve $40 trillion in debt. So, I hope they're all able to keep the government open, and then really genuinely work on, financial reform. But that's probably not going to happen.
But I think you can't fall into you can't fall into yeah, thinking that they can't do anything because I think you have seen at least small amounts of, again, it's not in the federal government, but I think you have seen little pockets of
Right.
politicians being able to deliver with pressure properly applied,
Right.
all
You
that stuff.
can, but I also think too, like what some of the East Coast cities, probably including your own, has seen, right? Like your taxes have gone up. You're taxed a lot of high percentage of what you earn, and services like being prepared for snow that seemingly comes almost every year. Not this bad, I get it, but
Yeah.
services aren't there, and states like California, right, wanting to tax people even more, when they can't effectively manage budgets or know where various dollars have gone. And yeah, I don't know when those things stop, but we won't solve them here today. Best to prepare yourself by investing wisely,
Yes, fair
getting your
enough.
money working for you.
Yeah.
And I think using all that insight and information that you get, right? This is the benefit of AI and technology, and fast communications and access to things on the internet, is it can help you make, you know, make your own better decisions, right? It can help you navigate what you want to do from a career path perspective. It can help you learn more things, right? There are tons of cool things out of AI and technology. I've been using AI like crazy. I think we've talked about it before, but I've been using it, to work on, foreign language skills. I've been using it a ton for research now, right? Just compiling information. Holy cow, it's going to make a lot of things that you want to do, so much easier. So, take advantage of those tools to increase your skill set and, help you make better decisions from an investing perspective, which might be tough to say
Yeah.
relative to some of the comments I get on X about, cannabis investing, but I still believe in it. I still think I'm going to make, I'll really get laughed at this probably, but I still think I'm going to make outsized returns in that space. I think the dollar cost averaging approach and not getting worried about this news bit or that news bit is going to work. And I'll believe that up until someone with some credibility says, hey, we're not moving forward on stuff, right? We were just kidding about Schedule 3 or whatever. It's taken way longer than I would want it to take, but I believe it will be one of my better, longer term, better performing, investment allocations. And I do that with a bunch of different categories that I think, given the world that we are living in today, where are the opportunities to take advantage of it and get, my money working for me?
Yeah, that's fair. I will say on the cannabis front, specifically, I, have looked and kind of, because I know it's been a little bit bumpy. The volatility has come back into play in 2026 for cannabis, especially when it's focused on the US. But
December
just
and
looking,
2026, but yeah,
what'd you say?
I said December and 2026.
You're right. That's true. Okay, well, fair enough. But I think had been looking over 2025. If you were looking from January 25 to January 26. Again, I know we're not through January 26 just yet until we close today. But looking if you were to dollar cost average over that time period, how might be surprised how the returns kind of come out.
Did you use the dollar cost averaging calculator?
I did, yes, which is
Nice.
another kind of online tool to be able to figure out, how to do it. I think I was using point people to a specific place if they want to look themselves, right? I
Are you
guess.
getting sponsorship dollars for referring the
I
business?
This is a free. This is
And
out of
have
the
you filled
goodness
out
of
an
my.
outside business activity? By the way, everybody watching, since we enjoy such a heavily regulated environment, that if McKinsey actually did that, you'd have to fill out a form for approval first. Your OBA.
That is true. Yes. Very, very regulated. This is so, which luckily I don't have to report because it is not. But yes, I was just looking at, I think you had found this, which is MLQ.ai, and they've got some great tools to kind of take a look at, different stocks, different names, ETFs as well. And one of the features that they offer, I'm sure you can find a bunch of other ones, is a dollar cost average calculator. And so you might be surprised. I would say is the only thing there.
What'd you find out?
What did I find out? I don't want to, should I share actual, um, ooh,
Percentage
okay.
numbers? Well, you can't do it. Well, we're trying to do no tickers, right? So that we don't have
That's
to
true.
pull.
A basket of
So
sorts.
I wouldn't do it on a ticker. I would do it on an index or a basket of securities.
All
I
right.
think, as far as we know, that's okay. We haven't been told that that's not okay. Our
Fair.
limitations are when we mention our own products and then it becomes marketing material and then it's got to be pulled and then reviewed. And most of the time, what we say is fine. It's not edited, but then, you have to post it for later. And I'm seeing comments that I need to probably turn my voice up a little bit.
That's
Try
okay.
that.
Okay, I
But
turned
yeah,
my
what did you find out? I assume you used possibly a U.S. basket of
you.
cannabis securities. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. You'd be correct. So, yeah, 'cause I think that's where we were looking as well versus global versus US. Global has done very, very well. US has also done very well, but I know there's been more volatility in the US just because there's so much hinging on what happens, with rescheduling with this federal reform that's coming. So, focusing just in the US, sort of names, looking at a basket of stocks of US names, had tried to just set up something for, if you had invested the first moment possible in January 25, $100. And then I think I had set mine up to weekly. You can adjust if it's monthly, but was just getting a sense of if you were to add in $100 weekly across the entire year, I guess plus a month, plus also the volatility that we're experiencing in this month, you would be up. And I guess did I tell you already? I think up
Well, I
44
know how
point
much.
up 44.59%.
So
if
from
you were
what
to do
I know, that's roughly double what the basket would be, at least over the last year, right? So I was looking at the U.S. basket and the global basket, and and so the thing that hit me was like it just didn't really match the sentiment I've seen online.
that?
The U.S. basket is up, I think, roughly 20-ish%, probably a little bit more, outpacing the U.S. broader market. The Mag 7 tech-driven U.S. market, and I think the global basket was more than double the 1 year
Sure.
number as of yesterday. Um, so it's kind of crazy, right? In a year where we still haven't seen reform, we've seen a lot of volatility, but to have those numbers posted is awesome. I'll take it for now. I'll take it for now with no meaningful reform. Now, obviously, when we get meaningful reform, I'd like to see much bigger numbers.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time last night and this morning trying to, comment, make posts, and respond to people just to remind them so that they don't feel like they're running into another, when was that? December 18th, something like that.
18th. Yeah.
Um, so they don't feel like they're running into another situation like that, that even if it happens today, right? Do the algos catch that, by the way? Even if it happens today, just kidding. I would, I would love for it to
It'd be
happen
great.
today. I just
I
don't know.
know. Yeah.
But even if it happens today, that will be great. Will we see a spike? Probably. I mean, we saw spikes sort of leading up to that December 18th until things were halted, right? A half hour before or an hour before the actual announcement.
Yep.
But we need a real listing. We need real custody solutions before, more meaningful capital can come into the space. Remember, they're small stocks. I know people get upset when I call them micro caps, and depending on which one you're looking at, I know from a dollar value threshold, it doesn't match up. But the way, you know, a lot of firms are now looking at the market cap space. They're sort of breaking all the stocks into percentages, especially now that we live in a world where there's multi-trillion-dollar market cap companies. That makes the smaller ones even that much smaller. Um, you need those things. So expect volatility, which again, from my perspective, it's why I'm going to take the long-term view. It's why I'm not going to try to market time. Even when we get the good news, I'll still be dollar cost averaging into it for quite a while. I'm going to continue to sort of look at this as the equivalent of, the repeal of prohibition in the alcohol space, right? Your best opportunity wasn't 2 weeks before they repealed it and then the 2 weeks after it and hope you got the timing correct. Even though I don't really know what those traded like over the weeks, that ensued before and after.
Sure.
Um, to be a long-term investor in that category was a smarter approach. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I think there's a lot more growth ahead for these companies. I obviously could be wrong, so take that advice with a grain of salt. And I can actually hear a bit of an echo now, by the way. But
You can. Hmm.
yeah, it just started to come in that second. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's how I'm gonna approach it. You got to approach it the way that you want to approach it, but don't be surprised to see volatility in these size of stocks. And don't be surprised that there's some people waiting to take the other side of the trade that you're on in the short term in these kinds of stocks. And, other than that, sort of fingers crossed that we get what we're looking for sooner rather than later.
That is true. I am curious. I feel like last time we were on, you had asked me just sort of more broadly, when does interest really move into international names? When do you see those
Mhm.
flows kind of come and follow? Kind of making it more cannabis specific. We talked about how if you're looking at US performance, which is still doing great, but comparing that against sort of that global performance, which is really doing great, when do you think what changes to kind of bring in flows to something that does have exposure to, of course, the US, the change, the catalyst there, but also is kind of complemented by more established markets. I did have some stats, which I'll share after on sort of the European market in Canada, but it seems like there's some good stuff out there that's a mix.
Are you pulling
Did
it
that
up?
work?
Are you going to tell
Oh,
us? Oh.
I can. I'm curious first on your take, just sort of generally when does that global kind of side of things really pick up interest wise?
I mean, I think it's a good question, right? I think it's a function of where the U.S. is at as well, right? When there's more acceptance internationally, for me, the question will be where, will the product all come from? Will it be U.S. centric product? Can U.S. or maybe California or wherever genuinely be the champagne, right, of this category? Honestly, if they're smart now, they would start to band together and have a certification process and do exactly what tequila does in Mexico, or and what champagne does in France, and really try to own that component. But obviously, you can grow these plants all over the place. You can probably grow them more cheaply in a bunch of different areas, but it's trying to figure out where you're going to get quantity versus quality. And I do think, fast forwarding 5 or 10 years from now, I think a meaningful part of the industry will be in the consumables, right? Drinks and edibles of some sort, and vapes of some sort. And, will the quality, at least of the flower, matter as much in those products? Probably not. Certainly the quality of their production manufacturing process will certainly matter. But you'll still have this component that I'll call it maybe the cigar aspect of things, right? You have cigar aficionados out there, and they only want these kind of leaves from this location, and they only want hand rolled. They don't want production rolled. I think you'll see the same thing in the cannabis industry as well. But I think the vast majority of products that are sold that drive the economics of the industry will come from the most efficient places, and that will be a function of what international markets open up, how aggressive we can be in the US with export, both from an efficiency perspective from production, but then also from a quality perspective. So hope it's soon, but I don't know when the exact date will be.
Fair enough. No, of course. I find still the global kind of aspect really interesting, and I'm always surprised that I understand why there's so much focus on the US. That's the biggest market. That's where the change is sort of hinging on. So I understand that. But I think just from a volatility perspective, but just kind of from a diversification perspective, it's always interesting to me that there isn't more focus on that as well. Let me share these EU stats as we're going. I see some questions coming in, which are great. But there was a new piece that came out from Forbes talking about cannabis in sort of the market abroad. So they were sharing some quick stats saying 28 countries in the EU have some form of legalization, whether that's medical or adult use. They're still comparing and giving it context to say that the market in Europe generally is only 1.7 billion versus the US, which is roughly 32. So quite a difference. And I think gives you a sense of scale that it is almost like a state, basically, of the US in terms of scale of market. But Prohibition Partners had put out a report, and they had a projection that it should reach 2.5 billion roughly by the end of this year, and then get closer to just under 4 in 2029, which is far off, but ultimately seeing some growth there. And yeah, so I think it's still a ever growing area. I know it is small relatively, but again, with better rules and regulations in place, I think easier to navigate for some of these companies. And interesting.
Yeah, and I would still say, remember the sort of triple impact of the plant, right? In industrial, medical, and I'll call it social. Um, so really, really, I think strong opportunities for this industry, for the companies that are in it. I think the players that we see today can be dramatically different from the players we might see 5 or 10 or 15 years from now. Um, so again, barring me hearing from someone reputable that progress, is going to stop being made, I'm still DCA in, even though I saw the jokes about DCA and the luggage the other day, which was funny. I'm still going to DCA, not the airport DCA. And it turned out my bag was actually in that pile. It had actually gotten to the airport sooner than I did because I had a longer layover because of some of the delays. And so I was standing there for probably a good 30, 45 minutes waiting for my bag, only then, because I'm an idiot, to figure out that my bag was already there.
That's why I feel like a lot of people really want like a really bright suitcase or a wrapped suitcase so that they can find it. You could get like a cannabis wrapped, although you'd probably get stopped a ton, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
that is true. All right, we're getting to a bunch of questions. Let me see if I can pull some of these
All
up.
right, let's fire away.
Don't want to be ignoring them. Let's see really quickly. Sonic Yogi has a great question on curious if there's some carve-outs for hemp drinks. Will those be added to the basket? Is that a consideration? So
Yeah, I don't see why not. If you're in the business, right? If you're a company in the business, in the industry, no reason why you would be a consideration for both the U.S. basket or the global basket. So sure, absolutely.
yeah, true. And I guess kind of already seeing that, just if some of the companies, I know some companies are, trimming their exposure to hemp drinks, but if we own companies that have some exposure to hemp drinks, that is already kind of built in currently, right?
Yeah, folks are dying to know how that's all going to work out, right? I saw the news about the United Center, which, on one hand is great, but on the other hand, who knows what's going to happen,
Yeah.
to all things hemp. And it's the same thing. The one thing we know for sure, what's seemingly going to happen on the hemp side, at least the intoxicating hemp side, is that it's going to go away relative to how it works today, right? I know there's a lot of hope and optimism that things could be extended or that new rules can be made, and maybe that will happen. But the only thing I'm seeing right now is, a real change in business models for some of these companies. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. And, I'm not averse to just, instead of hemp drinks, THC drinks.
Yeah.
Granted, you can't distribute them probably the same way under Schedule 3, even though you do have states that have adult use. So something can be worked out, I think. But yeah, I think in one way or another, people want those things. The market will find a way to get there. And the unfortunate thing is that we need, bureaucrats and politicians to help in this process, at least as much as possible. Um, so I think it gets there. I'm not quite sure how it gets there, but I think it definitely does.
That's fair. Mitch has got an interesting question also. I think it doesn't have to be a federal sort of resolution in terms of hemp drinks and everything like that. We could see another layer of kind of patchwork on the state side. But I feel like, again,
Right. I think what'll have to get probably reconciled is, then how does it sort of legally operate? Is it like a state now that allows adult use or any use really? Um, and so there's some negative impact from a federal perspective, right? I'm still trying to piece this out for, for the current MSO industry, right? The multi-state operators, which is, it clearly makes sense to me with Schedule 3 that anyone that's operating from a medical perspective should be good, right? And sort of walk and talk and look like any other company, full banking, listing, all of that. But adult use, which is not really covered by Schedule 3, it doesn't make adult use Schedule 1, I don't think, right? There's not two classifications for cannabis. But how's that going to be treated, right? Would there be a 280E tax? I don't think so, right? Based on my understanding of it. But can you not have interstate commerce with adult use, but maybe you could have interstate commerce with medical use? So the reconciliation of all that, I think, is going to be crazy. And so a state like Illinois, who's, giving itself some ability to do it within the confines of their border, which I'm a big believer in state rights. For a company, they just have to sort of navigate all that. And hopefully we get a lot of clarity, right? And that's the other thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out for people in terms of all things Schedule 3 is that we do need, some, I'll call it custody guidance. And hopefully that custody guidance will in some way incorporate companies who are able to sell products, either hemp based in Illinois, like we saw, or adult use in states. It gives them some cover as well to be able to operate like a normal functioning company.
yes, that is well said. Let me see. I had seen a question, I think from, I want to say Stevie, also just sort of not hashing, but reminding people on the difference it would make for, here we go. From Stevie, good question. Can you talk about what a difference it would make when there's sufficient custody for cannabis stocks? A lot is quick.
I think a lot, right? And this is me guessing or projecting, whatever, guessing. And I think I also posted this in a post today, which I said, so we need that. I need that as an investor. I need that liquidity that comes from other people being able to buy and sell. And granted, there'll be traders, but there'll be, long-term investors as well. But then I also said, all right, well, put it into perspective, right? How much is a big institution going to allocate to the cannabis space? How much is, large funds going to allocate to the cannabis space? Not a lot, right? 0.5%, 1%, maybe. But if I'm now looking at on, tens of trillions, of investable capital, and you can get just a quarter or 0.5% of that, holy cow, that's a meaningful impact on these stocks. So I think it's going to be small in the whole scheme of things relative to big institutions, but I think in aggregate, when everyone has easy access to it, and hopefully the rules are all clear enough, even with Schedule 3, that gives everyone all the cover they need to be able to invest in this space, a lot of dollars, right? It's a lot of dollars.
No, that's true. I'm seeing some, yeah, ultimately incredibly
and I
meaningful.
want to point out one other thing about that too. I think people will come at it in different ways. So I think that it won't just be, a cannabis ETF per se. It might be a healthcare. It might be a consumer discretionary. It might be various sector or indices that can start to add these stocks in it, where then the buying pressure of those products that hold those kind of stocks based on those categories are also putting upward pressure on, what are tiny stocks today, hopefully being much bigger stocks tomorrow.
Yep.
But also, again, with the news for Cresco, right? At the money offering, expect more dilution. That's going to come with it. Um, but if the growth is there, dilution won't matter as much as long as growth is there.
Good balance. Let me see as we're going through. Okay.
Your
Doobie's
favorite name?
question. I know it's a
Your favorite
great
name to
name, but I have
pronounce on
so
the
much
AlphaNooner?
trouble saying it. Du Bois. I think it's great. Okay. Happy Friday. Quick question on the CBD pilot program. Right or wrong, the pilot program is still scheduled to kick off in April. I think that's true from what I had read last. I think that
Yep.
is still the plan.
Yep.
I don't think it's
I
right or wrong. I think it seems like it's going to
I
be a
think it's
net
all right. I
benefit.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and understand where I'm coming from, right? I'm a big sort of right to try person, right?
Mm.
If you want to try something and you think it might help your life in some way, and it's not hurting anyone else for you to do it, I think we should have that kind of freedom in the US. So, given what I feel like I have read about the benefits of CBD, and it's going to be different for everyone's, makeup and their own endocannabinoid system, it won't be perfect for everyone. It won't be the solution for everyone. It might even be not so great for some people. But it seems like for a meaningful amount of people, it could be really good and really beneficial and really helpful and maybe even very cost effective. Let's hope, although there's all sorts of quality control that will need to go into place and hopefully responsibility and accountability for the companies that operate in that, which only increases their costs. So it's going to bring cost up a little bit higher. But I think it's a good thing. I love to see it. Hopefully, it's not just a trial run, it's just part of the process. And for those that will use this as medicine, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I feel like obviously it will be a big benefit for seniors a lot of the time in terms of their access to it. I'm curious if there'll be a differentiation. Oh, not yet. I don't think so. If there'll be a differentiation between thinking of it as CBD or thinking of it as something that is sort of related from the cannabis, universe, and if that helps kind of soften the view. Because I think the trends that we've seen, the demographics that we've seen, younger people seem to have embraced it the most. I think there is still a range, obviously, the middle of the pack and older people have really warmed to it more than they have over the past several decades. But I'll be curious to see, I don't know, kind of if
I
there's
also
some
think more
warming to
science
cannabis.
will come to the space, right? We've already seen
Sure.
it now in the cannabis and the hemp space, sort of fast acting or not. And I think the more that people's interaction with the product in whatever form they're taking it in gives them an experience somewhat similar to something else that they're used to that maybe has a lot more negative side effects to it or negative impact on your body or your health, the more the experience can start to be the same, I think then the even more wider adoption you'll see of that approach, which again, too much of anything probably is not healthy. Cannabis isn't for everyone, but for those for who it is for, and where it works well for them to have that similar experience, I think again only creates more opportunity for it. And again, I'm still a big fan relative to the medicinal aspects of it, and as you say, for the seniors, right, just in terms of anti-inflammatory and things like that that are incredibly beneficial for it. Obviously the sleep stuff is really important, but just in general feeling better, right, in consuming a product like that. I'm obviously all in and all for it.
Yeah, I think it can be difficult to kind of shed some of the stigma, but I think in dealing with it in face to face, seeing research, seeing it come from a more medical perspective as well, that has to add to the trust of it ultimately.
Right.
See another question from WEB. I want to flash it up, but it has technically a ticker in it, so I don't want to flash that because we're going to try to keep this one ticker free. But it's a great question talking about if you were to be investing in, let's say, heating, air conditioning, and ventilation in that sort of industrials subsection.
Which is having a
Subsector.
fantastic start of the year as well, but keep going.
That's also a pun in itself. Fantastic. That's great. Okay, so they're asking if any of the companies in that any of the names, any
Category.
of the major names, let's say, of that space are directly tied to the cannabis industry. Because I think we've talked about in the past how heating and ventilation super important for a ton of different industries, ton of different, construction, all
Off
of
the
that.
top of my head, I think the answer is no, right? But I'd need to go scan the portfolio, but I'm 93.7%
Sure.
sure. And I think Dan would have said something to me of, hey, I've got this position and they have an interesting sort of cross angle here. I don't, I, off the top of my head, I don't think any of the positions I would say have a direct component to that industry, as much as I'm sure plenty of industries, other industries outside of the heating cooling area, use those heating and cooling products from those companies, right, to do what they do. I think you talked about, right, when we did the
Mm.
RIP, forefront tour in Chicago, and just sort of the machines that they had in there to kind of keep climate controlled and temperature controlled and humidity controlled and all of those things. Yeah, so many spaces that category is the picks and shovels for. It was sort of the idea and the genesis that was presented to us and got us bought in on why this could be a really interesting category to sort of isolate from a stock perspective, and knock on wood, even though the AUM doesn't show it, we're working on that. But the performance shows these stocks are meaningfully delivering. So definitely take a look, and thanks for the question.
Yeah, good question. If that happens in the future, we should highlight it because I think that would be really cool. And I would not be surprised if hopefully at some point in the future we did see something like that happen. But yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of it has been kind of in the traditional areas that you would expect to see that in. But AI has obviously become so important in terms of, providing cooling there as well.
What do you think
Um,
Alan Iverson feels about the growth of AI?
uh,
Because I have
well,
to admit, I
do you-
think about that a lot every time I hear the word.
the initials of it all.
I just think about Alan Iverson.
I think no worries as well, WB. I really appreciate it. No worries. Thank you so much. No, but I think the thing that would be annoying more is to have the name Al. Because I feel like you'd probably be
Mm,
scanning stuff and constantly be like, is that me? I don't know. Right. Do you think about Alvin Iverson?
I don't
What are
know
you thinking
why
about
it just
him?
pops into my head periodically. Just
All right.
because we called him AI back in my heyday,
Oh,
right?
really? Okay. I didn't know that. I thought it was like Iverson was like the last name or Ivy. I don't know. Who knows?
AI.
AI. I'm seeing a good question. Thanks, Mitch, for phrasing your question so I can ask it.
Well,
But
there it is.
so asking a question about sort of the short interest, I think,
Oh, really?
on the cannabis
Jeez,
side of
I've not seen
things.
that.
Um,
It's not a big fund, so that percentage doesn't bother me much, but I did
if
not
that's
know it
true.
was that high. Though it's actually been a while since I've even looked at short interest in the non-leverage version. Um, but that seems high. That seems high. But again, just as a reminder, why we built it, first of all, we thought we were building it at the lows. We were wrong. And in part, the strategy of not building an inverse version was part of not wanting to put sort of downward pressure on these stocks, or at least making it easy. Um, so we definitely got our timing wrong in terms of the launch, but the goal of it was to bring traders. The goal of it was to bring more liquidity. Does that bring more volatility to these smaller stocks? It does, but that's also what brings traders and more liquidity to the space. And so, if you believe an industry can go from its infancy to a mature industry, at least from an investing perspective, you're going to have those tools, futures, options, leverage, all as a component to it. So that was the goal with it. And it seems like, at least for the most part, people are using the product in that way. Um, so I don't know. That seems high, but I mean, that seems not that doesn't seem high as in wrong, but it feels like a lot just in the
Okay.
percentage of the ETF. But it's a small fund, so
Well,
I'm not too worried about it.
fair enough. We'll need to check from, I think, actual sources just to give real information, but just from doing a quick scan, was looking at
Yeah,
Market Beat and they
I
were
mean, I don't disagree
saying
with the number, but yeah, higher than I would
that's
have
okay.
expected.
No, that's fair. I think they're saying looks like
Higher than I would expect
27.
it too, because then that says there's a meaningful amount of it that are available to borrow, right? I think hopefully most people know. I think you still have the option in your brokerage accounts where you don't have to put it in a margin account, right? Sort of type one is cash, type two is margin. And when you have your positions in what's considered type two or margin, it allows the broker to hypothecate your shares and loan them out, which is where shorts can find shares to hold. So something worth considering is, if you want to make it difficult for people to short, make sure your broker holds your positions of whatever you're invested in what's considered cash or type one, in which they shouldn't be hypothecating or loaning those shares. Um, so that's one way to try to manage that. So again, that seems like a high percentage in terms of availability to short, since the only place you're getting it is from the outstanding shares of the product itself.
Yeah. I think well said. I want to track and pull the actual data to check it, but it seems like what this is saying from the last report, it's actually a decrease. So maybe coming down from what had happened maybe in late December. Who's to say? But interesting. Okay, I know we're close at time.
I was just learning.
I feel like
it's not a shocking news, but learning the other day that some people are shorting our short funds. So they're betting, betting that the market will still be long,
Sure.
as opposed to just investing long into the market. They're saying, I'll short that. They'll go down in an upward trending market and then I'll make money. And it's like, that's a complicated way to try to make some money, but whatever.
One, seems complicated. Two, it seems like the worst thing to short against if they're both trying to find they're not trying to broadly short. They're just trying to short what they think
there's some embedded cost in it, right? We have to short, and so we have cost to do that. And so that alone maybe gives you a bit of an advantage. But yeah, I might see doing that with an index-based product that shorts, but when you're shorting a basket of what should be weaker stocks with the goal of, making long returns or positive returns, it's an interesting angle. I wouldn't do it, but that's what makes markets.
I guess so. Just looking also at performance. I think
the leverage stuff. Looking at Mitch's comments. That's why they're day only, right? Don't hold them for longer than a day. Day trade, day trade them all you want, ours and everybody else's included. That decay will kill you. I think the other day I just put in a link for someone to go look at that chart that Mackenzie spent a lot of time making sure I got on the page of that ETF we're all referencing, and it shows you like there are small scenarios over time where you can positively make money over time, right? Not on a day-to-day basis. Please, it's the investment objective is 1 day, which means you shouldn't be holding it for any longer than that. You can make a Kalshi-like decision with that product, but that's all you should be using it for.
Yes. Good reminder, good warning, good advice. All that information is on the website if that is helpful in terms of getting education there, as well as other products, as well as other things. Well, all that's there, as well as
some pretty cool stories. You had Dr. Ron on. He is continuing to kill it.
Yes.
So if you don't have some Dr. Ron in your portfolio, I think you might be doing it wrong.
Get Dr. on it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's right. He's doing great. And we've got more coming. So definitely stay in tune with social media. I think that's the best place to kind of get quick updates in terms of what's going on next, but also, of course, a good reminder that we have the events page. I think we're going to be kicking things off next week, talking buybacks, actually, which will be interesting. Just sort of, I think we haven't talked about it in a while, so I think it'll be nice and interesting.
Yeah, Minion.
Yep,
Nice.
So Minion should be good. With all that said, have a great weekend. I know we have like 1 minute. Any final?
Staying warm. That's all
weekend?
I'm doing, and hopefully watching some racing on Sunday. I'm ready for NASCAR to be back.
That sounds good. All right, rock and roll. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.